Hello, Americans. There is a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, a former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, who has and has had collusion slash S with mafia themed syntax. For example, of a Michael Frances and his roles with, I don't know, him or a Sammy the Bull is involved with people with WFSB, Channel 3, a CBS affiliate, people associated with family and intimate ties of a Gail King, and both administrations' roles with intelligence, showing them fake transcripts and having shown them that and or the equivalent. The FBI has wire crime acts and methods where they have self-valued roles used remotely, criminally foreign influence slash worse, slash hyper criminally foreign influence, so to speak, too, relative to how they have replaced what our founders declassified. About how both the North and the South had roles with things forced against everyone, against themselves and everyone else, syntactically, therefore physically, otherwise that body was sensed. Even changing what nature communicates with black pupils, whites of eyes. All right. So, in other words, the Britain Superior Court has a bunch of people, and Harper Courts and their family members and intimate ties have roles with child abusers, leaders of kids, years apart, first forced, and people involved with the torture, extortion, and fact-cheating nature slavery method of elderly homes at the same time. They know I recorded this, including with people tied to and as former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants and their family members, with all sides of criminal and civil cases. The interbranch have been since founding putting fake transcripts into databases and their relative delusions, where and how they were abused through campuses. I recorded with names next to each of the campuses had ties made for them as their collusion slash us with all kinds of identity theft, fraud, slander. And I never had a class with a Joseph DeMoro. There's more than one Joseph DeMoro intercities. I'm talking about the one I never had any of them, but they're involved with town lines and planting evidences with agencies, foreign and domestic, with sexual and medical offenders of kids, increasingly people tied to body dumping spots. With my fifth grade teacher before and after I was in fifth grade, and with kids of the leaders of the kids, including the principal child abuser and his campus involved with Kevin Harris is involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders against me, acting so others can take pictures to make it look like I ever had a word of conversation with him. I never did. Never had a class with him. Walked out of the school behind me one time. There are proofs that they took that picture to plant a fake exception. That's one of the things that the interbranch communicated they do through confessions. The interbranch and foreign make confessions to us at the same time, relative to where and how manifest our means to discern the people with uses of isms in their voices, in their voicings. There are excuses that individuals have because they are forced to entertain such logic in nature with things pretended debatable that are not. That wouldn't have gotten away with that. That wouldn't have been gotten away with unless campuses A through Z were sickly, non-distinctly hurt, while they are sickly distinctly incapable of defending their fact, true nature, quality aspects in nature, and affording discerned. It's affording to be appreciated short words, proper with convictions, let alone with guilt, regarding our founders' communications to us declassified. In other words, we're not supposed to leave out the breaching method that had slavery entrenched northern colonies and southern colonies, and roles with it only permitted, and then America's founders were born. What nature of unity could speak? What nature of independence? What nature of principle treatments? Ones that has styles, needs, and natures reliant upon uses of isms where they are not valued. The reason that New York is worse in the suburbs across the country, the suburbs were designed tactically to nature for a torture, extortion, fact-cheating nature, slavery method. The only reason that is gotten away with pretending to be debatable. People have been making examples of free speech that they know is not free speech. Our founders left declassified for us to appreciate why and how the breaching method made everyone pretend they had free speech to an extent. Not just because the differences of guilt between internationally monitored conversations, monitored to measure and maintain everyone an extent of collusion slash S against everyone else, syntactically, therefore physically. Even with slavery, northern colonies and southern colonies, it had that specifically things that no one wanted collusion with but no one was allowed roles other. Everyone was fact, cheap nature, tortured, extorted, and enslaved. And the only president slash chief that we know was our founder, plural, is James Madison. See, they have other pretenders. They declassify for us to not allow people other to know for certain that any name of a founder was a founder besides James Madison. See, we can't defend ourselves syntactically. This breaching method has criminal insidiousness natures of peace and of unity that can afford a tactical terror from how the nature shows us the human species body is a unity force while being an individualist force. And all group differences like male, female, it's generating them with other species bodies. They are about with that which is generating them. And for its system positive onto itself here, or our differences forced from here as forest, space, nature transfer. But this is also the counters to the sexual offenders of kids. And they're pretending their motivations are relative to whatever it is. While you guys aren't paying attention, they have collusion /S with criminally foreign users of the databases with all kinds of identity theft, fraud, slanders, and interbranch tricks recorded. Predicate acts of facts methods are recorded. They're only capable of self-valuing collusion /S with that, and then cover-ups because that's how they use them remotely. It keeps names on all sides of criminal and civil cases. The interbranch names in the intelligence, foreign, and domestic is actually shared, which is also layers of the things they're supposed to hide that aren't even things to hide. It's just, in other words, natures of peace, relationships forced by nature itself, again, with the human species body, an individual's body system, forces us to appreciate. So we have been systems individually grouped in simultaneous appreciation of those values, tactical terror, from how nature shows us to appreciate the simultaneous / hyper simultaneous. It shows us that we are distinct from other species bodies, also of individual bodies, with all group differences generated by it, with our syntactical appreciation of it. Or it demonstrates that we were, when we are, and the moment we will be, using systems abridged from its own. It demonstrates. But we can appreciate what nature demonstrates even with black pupils, whites of eyes, or this would have surfaced. You guys gave value to exceptions, the differences of names and titles, their opinions, the value of it. Even the readings of the statutes consciously offensively with lawyers of the FBI and of Wethersfield police officers and police forms, intercities and intra-cities. Recorded, confess, demonstrate, confirm. There are people with the corner of street on Elm Street in Rocky Hill and Wethersfield who sought me out and had the Wethersfield police chief and people tied to them seek me out to make confessions and demonstrations, confirmations of their roles with all these other countries in the news, people from Russia, people from Ukraine, their campuses, involved with them too, forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded collusions against me with FBI Director Robert Luskin, many tied to a former Mayor Gold and a Ruth reportedly related to a former mayor from Wethersfield, and other mayors, intercities, people tied to the name Fienza, and their syntax on Facebook is collusions with the FBI and with Connecticut courts, prosecutors, judges, victims, advocates who have time collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and sexual medical offenders of kids, including ones as doctors, foreign and domestic, putting fake things in transcripts as families used remotely too, with the differences of kids, the differences of elderly, the difference of middle age. A breaching method. Our founders left us to understand, appreciate how a breaching method is exploiting all natures of difference /S, and then further hyper additionally, human differences, and further hyper additionally, as collusions only permitted with such, therefore at campuses A through Z, therefore with all exceptions. This breaching method has all natures of adaptations to itself and helping those adaptations exactly the way it needs to have all sides, arrays of opinions, exceptions, sides of opinions and issues and exceptions as collusion /S, black pupils. So they will not follow mandated law. Mandated law says you don't change, fake, and hide what people say and say about child abuse acts. See, your Wethersfield police chiefs retired. They have roles with readings of statutes and precedents with their lawyers that give them the benefit of the doubt at the last second. So they do things and say things online that are criminally foreign influenced, specifically to bring things before courts that were already used criminally foreign influence / hyper criminally foreign influence. And is at countries A through Z. And one of the ways they get away with that, the way the breaching method shows them how to get away with it, is by keeping other things, others themselves blamed, at keeping countries A through Z only capable of self-valuing having been blamed too. Things that a breaching method shows us. Nature itself shows us a human fact sheet nature breaching method is one of the things that the syntax and the nature of the people behind the syntax was about, where they had those crazy laws, not just northern colonies and southern colonies. Our founders left us to understand how that was entrenched. In other words, our founders left us to measure, to understand how a breaching method was and is measuring and maintaining when they teach about how America unfolded and they teach about how people voted on slavery. They are used self-value, they are measured and maintained self-value collusion /s, replacing and valuing having been replaced, what our founders declassified. Like about why and how James Madison is the only founder we know the name of specifically. And regarding that, James Madison did not have free speech once he was then a president / chief also. He still didn't have free speech. We're supposed to understand that the breaching method forced the Civil War and James Madison's plan. We're supposed to understand that no one had free speech at the time still. You don't vote on slavery. Get down. I'll gather around. Who disbelieves? You guys don't pretend it's personal either, too. Get me off of fake conversations with CBS affiliates and their people with other networks, too. WTNH has FBI all along Route 175 from the founding locations in Old Wethersfield, Main Street, in conjunctions to it and to that. A bunch of people involved, intercities, interstates, time collusion /s for them, even with the World Trade Center predicate acts. And with child abusers, these are the kids years apart. They have collusion /s with, and people involved with home break-ins in my area. Fake conversations with me at the police station when I was a kid and as an adult with ones that weren't at all. I didn't even have a conversation with them at all. They just put fake transcripts into branches. They can't afford to have what's discerned, what's recorded since founding, pounding drums. They can't approve. In other words, get them on paper, one name and sequence, black people, period, who disbelieve.